Welcome to a place where I instantly felt extremely outclassed, yet also greatly underwhelmed. Today, I am touring a small city within Sonoma County's wine country, Healdsburg, California. Healdsburg was my final stop on this trip to California before heading back home. First, let me start with some positives. I had a fantastic burrito at Agave, a little Mexican restaurant in a strip mall just off the highway. My only complaint was that there are no sides that come with the entrees here, perhaps a sign of what was to come in this area, as this tends to be a more upscale thing to do. Healdsburg is a beautiful place with plentiful trees, stunning architecture, and streets that are easily walkable. It seems to be a community that turns out for community events, as there was something going on in the plaza downtown, and it seemed very well attended. By the way, this plaza was one of my favorite parts of Healdsburg, with the massive trees surrounding the park and the buildings surrounding it. It almost felt like a square that you could find in some parts of Europe. Fun fact, if you've ever used lemon pepper seasoning, Healdsburg was where that was first commercially created. As I do in so many of my rural destinations, I try to check out all of the local museums. So naturally, I went to the Healdsburg Museum, one of my first stops in town, and it was an epic flop. I just didn't get it. When I went in, the large room that you walk into was filled with a seasonal display on Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead. While a lot of work went into making this display, it didn't tell the story of the community or feature historical items or anything else that you might see in a local museum. This museum, while in a gorgeous old building, a former Carnegie Library, was not really worth the stop. It seems like it is more of a seasonal art exhibit that gets rotated out throughout the year rather than a true community museum. Healdsburg felt very stuck up and not very welcoming to people like me that do not come from lifestyles of wealth and wine. All throughout town, there are places for wine tasting, which I'm sure are great if you're into that kind of thing, but personally, I don't drink. There are also some very expensive-looking stores around town, definitely not the kind of stores that I usually shop at. Healdsburg is named after an entrepreneur from Ohio that came to the area during the California Gold Rush and squatted on some land here. That man's name was Harmon Heald. Heald may have been a little self-conceited, as he had the vision to create a town here to be named after himself. In 1857, he built a store and a post office, sold many parcels for the downtown area, and designed the plans for a Spanish-style plaza, the one you still see here today. In 1871, the Northwestern Pacific Railroad expanded north and created a stop here, bringing more visitors and commercial business to the area. Orchards and farming operations also quickly called this area home, creating a culture that centered around the fruits of the land. That tradition continues today, as Healdsburg has over 60 wineries surrounding it, and the level of wealth in the area seems to reflect that, as I felt so out of place, even just walking around here. The people had an air about them, the buildings had an air about them, and I just simply didn't fit into whatever air that was. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad town at all, or that the people here are bad people in any way. I think it is gorgeous. It's just not for me. But maybe it is for you, and in that case, go. It is stunningly beautiful and has lots of activities, restaurants, wineries, and shopping that could create a great weekend away for you. But not so much for me. To be fair, there are parts of town that I did not get to, as I was mainly in the historic downtown area. Perhaps the common man in this area is farther away from the center of town. Perhaps I'll need to give Healdsburg another chance on another trip to find out. I'll see you next time, somewhere else, down the road.